Hello, all my sewing and designing friends. We're here in the ArtBarn, the land of gorgeous fabrics, with some pretty incredible women. So on the screen, in the blue is Beth, in the white is Gwen, in the gray print is Diane, and in the adorable black and white print dress is Roxy. And Gwen is here and she's going to give us a lesson on the next version of her shawl, which is laid out on the table in front of us.
So the last time I was here, Marcy has these gorgeous Japanese linen gauzes, which is something I had never seen quite like this before. And I was totally enamored with it. And I knew that I wanted a shawl. And I thought I knew, and I still do, a bias shawl is wonderful because it really wraps well, it stays on the body, it's really comfortable, and you can move and work in it without it falling apart. And so this is a piece of linen. Marcy's got the original there in a different color. And one of the cool things about this linen that I liked was you can pull a thread really easily. So that was the first thing I did before I ever cut it, was I pulled threads. So I'm going to pull a thread here. I just took my needle.
So go kind of slow here, Gwen, because I'm adjusting the focus on my camera so that people can see.
I took a needle.
And you use the blunt end of it.
And I used the blunt end, and I just picked up one thread and stayed relaxed. I've talked about that before. And if the thread breaks, you can just go pick it up again. And I just pulled the thread, so you can see this thread in this linen pulls. So if any of you have ideas, this fabric would be fantastic for anything like this that you wanted to pull. And there's the thread.
And at the beginning it would just be going straight down.
Yeah, so before I ever cut it on the bias, I just pulled threads all the way across.
So that was the first thing you did before you...
Before I knew what I was going to do, I knew I wanted to pull threads.
And how much fabric did you start with?
I started with 2.5 yards.
Okay.
And I have some nice pieces left. We've probably got about 2 yards here finished. So I just pulled those. And then I cut it on the bias, and we have talked about doing that before. So you end up with triangle pieces. And
So I'm going to run the camera over it because, you know, the white line that you're seeing here is the selvage. And then here's another selvage. And then,
that's a bias.
so this,
Is a bias piece.
trace that off with your finger, Beth, and we'll follow it with the camera. So it just blends right in. It's hard to tell from afar, but this is the bias piece that's joined together. And did you sew that on the machine or by hand?
I sewed it on the machine,
little by
and
machine.
I sewed it on the machine, yeah.
Okay, let me come in for a close-up.
You know, when you're going to pick your bias, your line here, you know, for your 45, how do you know how much fabric where you're going to start?
Well, I took this piece of gauze, and I think they're like 54 or something wide.
I think they're less than that. I think they're
yeah.
more like 42.
Yeah.
But this looks like a square.
And so,
42.
yeah. And so I cut it in half lengthwise.
Okay, so she started with, so here are some other versions of that same fabric in different colors. Unfortunately, I think we're sold out of the beautiful gray and white that Gwen used, but we have other possibilities. So you took...
So I cut it in half lengthwise. So if you look at this piece from here to here, this is the half of the width of that fabric from that selvage to this
21
point.
inches in
Yeah.
this fabric. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just cut, oh, I see. So you cut it down the middle,
Cut
where
it-
the fold would be.
Yeah, so the
So it would
fold
have been like this.
yeah, would be here.
Okay.
And then I took that length, which would be from here to here, and folded it on the true bias. and cut it. I was scared.
But the cool thing about true bias is it doesn't ravel.
It doesn't ravel.
Bias, it's a law of the universe right up there with gravity. True bias doesn't ravel. So these edges that we're seeing here, and I'll come in a little closer so you can see them, they're a little ripply, but they're not going to ravel.
No. And I had originally thought about stitching on this edge, and I even stitched on one, but when I stitched on it, it kept the fabric from being able to stretch, and that's one of the things I really wanted. Was I wanted this fabric to be able to stretch lengthwise and crosswise, because that's what gives it the beauty when you wear it. That's what makes it comfortable.
clings more.
It clings more.
And the
It
linen
wraps
sticks to itself.
to your
Pop,
body.
pop it on yourself and show us how you wear it.
So this is, it wraps, and I can move my arms, I can work, and because it's bias, it hugs in. And so you can tell this is a pretty good sized piece, but I can even take this piece because it is bias, and it can go down to being
Like a
small.
scarf that you could wear under a coat or a jacket. So let's recap the process so first, before you did anything else,
Yeah. I cut it lengthwise, which you could do or not. I mean,
but didn't you pull the threads first?
I pulled the threads
Okay,
first.
pull
yeah.
the threads, and then did you do the black stitching at that point, or wait till later?
I waited till I actually
Okay.
had it sewn together.
And,
wasn't
okay,
sure.
so we all have a million questions. Roxy had some super good
Really
ones.
good
She's writing them down over there.
I'm gonna make one of these.
Yeah.
Attempted it.
I want one too. And so first you pulled the threads.
Mm-hmm.
Is each
so
one
you
of these lines
pull the threads.
one pulled thread?
Mm-hmm.
It's not two.
Well, I did pull 2 on some of them, or even 3 on some of them.
Okay,
But
so-
I can tell you one thing I would have done differently if I had thought about it, was I pulled these on the crosswise grain. Now, if I had pulled them on the lengthwise grain, I would have all my threads and my selvage running the same way, which would give a lot of movement to this.
Oh,
So that's just something to think about. You know, it's just part of the process of learning, and you go, oh yeah, I could have done that. So if you pulled the threads on the lengthwise grain going this way, and then stitched it, or then did whatever you were going to do, because you could take out a whole bunch and put ribbon in if you
Because
wanted
those are
to.
longer lengths.
They're longer lengths,
Just
but
by
then they
nature.
will run parallel to the selvage.
okay. So I'm
and
gonna.
everything would go that way.
So I want to be clear in
Yeah.
my little brain. So first you pulled the threads.
Uh-huh.
Then you cut it down the middle.
Uh-huh.
Then
I
then
s-
you then did you sew these seams
pieces.
together,
Mm-hmm.
or did you do the
Mm-mm. I
okay?
sewed them together.
Sew the pieces together. So there's 2 seams,
Mm-hmm.
chunk,
And then this one,
and then there's the bias seam,
seam down the middle.
and then you sat down and
stitched.
with it. Is it pearl cotton that you used?
It's actually a linen
Oh, perfect! It's a linen, like an
linen
embroidery thread.
It's a heavy linen thread. I think it's something that people use for weaving. I
Okay.
think it's a
Okay.
thread used
So
for
the
weaving.
thread, it could be a variety of things,
Could be lots of things.
and voila, you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Roxy. Roxy is like criming out of her skin here.
Okay, say you've cut, this is your half, right?
Mhm.
2.5
That's the
yards.
half, yeah.
Okay, then I still am not understanding how you're gonna get these.
So if I had
Measure,
this
yeah.
was my half, and I take this, and I've only got half, and I lay this like this, and I line up this straight of grain to the straight of grain hair, and I make this exactly straight of grain, and then cut this piece here.
And this one,
Nope, just
No.
this one.
just that one.
Just
okay.
that one. And that one becomes one of these links here.
Top, please. Okay, and then you keep moving down.
And then I keep moving down. And
so
then
then
I
you have
take-
this piece gone
Yeah. And
on
then
top.
and then I would take that and I could fold it
Extra
over,
piece.
and then this piece, then I would cut it here, coming across the bias this way, and that would give me one triangle.
Okay.
Oh, let me fold
Could
this
you not do two pieces at once? So that when you're cutting, you're doing this and the
You
top, the
could.
underneath piece and the top piece. I mean, understanding that you've already cut it along the length of the
Yeah.
fold line.
You could, it's just that cutting true bias is so. You
It's
have to be so
exacting.
much. It's so exacting.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I got
exactly,
it.
Beth.
Right.
It's
It's
so
not best.
exacting
You could do it
that
quick and dirty.
Yeah,
but
you could
not
do it
good.
quick and dirty, but you might end up with it being not quite on the
And
bias.
how do you do that? You just measure?
I'm
the
looking
line?
at grain.
Yep.
I'm looking
Yeah.
at grain. I pulled a thread, so I knew exactly where the straight of grain was here, and I knew where the straight of grain was here. So that was how and then I just tried to let the fabric relax and not stretch it.
So, this is long for a DIY video. I really, really hope that we can all learn from this.
I'll watch it.
Roxy will watch it, and she's going to make one.
Yeah.
So, if you decide to do one, we would love for you to do it. And the fabric, again, is this Japanese gauze that's very airy and light and thin and feels delicious. It'll be good in the winter as well as now. It's 100 degrees outside here today. So, it's always fun when Gwen comes. We have lessons, we get inspired, we play, and thanks so much for joining us.